Hi, I am Monocultured. I started this channel 8 years ago to document my study abroad experience, mostly for myself so that I could come back and watch these little videos and have good memories of it. I somehow got 80 subscribers in that process. Don't ask me how. Some people actually did watch my channel, and then I made history videos after that, and then I stopped. I'm starting this channel back up, and I figured what best to start with than to do a retrospective on my study abroad experience. Now that it is almost a decade later, it has been 8 years. Hello? Someone is here to say hi. This is Melody Lee. She's named after the song by The Damned. Well, she's purring. And if you hear crashing in the background, that is the radiator in my building. It is turned off in my unit, yet it still makes this sound. I really don't know. This building is like kind of old and janky. I started this channel 8 years ago to document my experience studying abroad, mostly for myself, but also just to share to anyone who might have been interested. I think my parents watched my videos a little bit while I was on this experience, but then I stopped. Then I stopped a little bit after I came back because I really didn't have any idea for what I wanted to do with this channel. Now I do. I want to start posting again, and I figured for my first video back, why not talk about the experience that brought me here to begin with? Especially now that it's been nearly a decade. It's been 8 years. This year it will be 8 years, which is insane to think about. It feels both longer and shorter. It feels like I've had a whole entire lifetime between studying abroad, and now I feel like I'm essentially a different person at this point. I look back at photos from when I was studying abroad and I go, that's a baby. I studied abroad through a program called USAC in the fall of 2018 at a program in Gwangju, South Korea. It was Cheonam National University. Obviously, I'm talking about South Korea, but I'm just gonna call it Korea here. Most people who studied abroad there are interested in Korean culture. They just refer to South Korea as Korea. No, I did not go to the dictatorship. I never set foot in North Korea. I have zero interest in giving any of my money, possibly, to the Kim regime. So just know that, because I say that to people and they like sometimes kind of look at me and like, is she communist maybe? When she says Korea, she's not saying which one because it was the North. No. On to the actual topic. Why did I study abroad? So this was kind of a multifactorial decision. I had always wanted to live abroad ever since I was a child, and this presented a really convenient opportunity to do that. I also made the trade-off of I'm gonna live at home and then study abroad instead of going out of state for college. I considered doing that at some point, but just the reality of how expensive college is and student loans and the fact that I just didn't have as many scholarships as I got, or I would not have had as many scholarships going out of state as I did staying in state from coming from a fairly rural area. Ironically, there were more scholarships for me because of that. And so it just made sense to live with my parents and try to accumulate as little debt as possible, especially because I was planning on going on into teaching. And I did do that for a little bit. I no longer am a teacher, but I knew that I was probably going to be in a career path that didn't pay a ton of money, and so I did not want a lot of debt. That being said, I still wanted to do something with my college experience aside from just living at home, because being a commuter student, it was fine and I liked my academic program, but I did not have the college social life at all, or the experience that a lot of people traditionally have, which was fine. I was pretty okay with that for the most part, but I wanted to do something. So I chose to study abroad for 1 semester. Let's talk about how I actually picked out my program and how I went about the logistics of studying abroad. There are a couple of different ways to study abroad. Probably one of the more common ones is what we call direct exchange. So my university had an agreement with universities in other countries where they would just do a one-to-one student swap. And so I would have paid my university's semester tuition but then attended the other university, and I would have just paid whatever their like housing and food costs were. That was actually pretty limited though. Most of the universities that my school had that sort of partnership with, they had mostly like international business programs, and I was getting a history teaching degree. So I needed something that offered a lot of humanities, and there just like weren't that many universities with that direct exchange program. So I had to look at another option, and the other option that my university really recommended was doing something through a program called USAC. This is my catalog for the fall 2018, spring 2019 semester, and they have, let me count how many countries you could go to. 28 different countries. They really varied in price and the types of classes that you could take. So it really made the most sense to look into this than to continue looking into the direct exchange program, especially since most of them offered both the fall and spring semester option. So why Korea? That's probably the next best question. They had a program that was kind of a similar price to what I was already paying per semester at my university, so it wasn't going to cost me that much more. That really mattered to me. I did not want to go into debt for that. They also had some of the classes that lined up with my degree program, which was good. I was able to take a lot of like sociology classes there. I was able to satisfy my language class requirements for my degree. So that was good. That worked out pretty well. And then the other thing was that when I was growing up, my dad was in the military, and he was stationed in Korea for a year. While I was in elementary school, and he was at one of the air bases that he could not bring us, family to. There's one called Osan, which you can bring family to. He was stationed at Kunsan, which you cannot bring your family to. So we were just like stuck in Illinois at the time, while Dad was off in Korea, which was like pretty cool, and it was kind of lame that we got left behind. And then he came back and just loved it. Like he talked about taking us there one day. He loved the food, the people, the culture. He showed me what the language looked like, and I thought it was a really cool looking alphabet. So I had always wanted at some point to go to Korea, and this just worked out really well. So that's how I did it. The process was I applied through USAC. I applied to their program. I think I also had to fill out like a separate application to the university as well. You have to like get approved by the university. But that was pretty straightforward. I no problem with that. I had decent grades, so got let in pretty easily. I also applied for a scholarship, and I think I got one that was around like 2,000 or 2,500. Between that and the scholarships that I already had through my university and also my state's Board of Education, which paid entirely for my first 2 years of school, I was able to use those for the semester that I was abroad. I was able to use those toward my program. So my program was like between the tuition and the boarding and the meal package, that was almost entirely paid for. I think it also may have covered some of the cost of my airplane ticket as well, which was like the next most expensive thing. How much did I pay for it? I have it in here. Okay, yeah, I found it. So single semester for my program was $51.80. My semester tuition at the time was somewhere between $4,000 and $4,500, so it wasn't significantly more. And then the dormitory room I picked out was 600,000 won, which is at the time was roughly $600. And then the meal plan I picked, they show ones that are between 229,000 Korean won and 715,000 Korean won. The meal plans in here, they're between around $200 and $200 and around $700. I think I got the did I get the most expensive one? No, I got a step down from it. So I think it was more like $500 or $600 that I paid for my meal plan. So literally my airplane ticket was more expensive than my room and board, which was mind-blowing. And then of course I covered some travel within the country. I got a meal plan that I think was like 14 meals a week in the dorm, so 2 meals a day. Most of the time I ate the food in the dorm, but it honestly wasn't very good. So I ate out at restaurants as well, but I still, for the most part, utilized my dormitory meal package. So I applied for the program, applied for the scholarship, and then I had to get some courses approved by the Dean of Academics for it to count toward my degree program or as like class equivalency. That was pretty straightforward, honestly. I just had to email some people. I think I had to go and get a signature on a paper at some point. And then after that, it was getting my passport and getting my visa, which I think I have my visa. Let me go grab it. But yeah, so I had to actually mail my visa to the consulate that was closest to me, which was a little bit sketchy. So I paid for expedited shipping with tracking because I don't think that was automatic with all USPS packages at the time. That felt really sketchy, but it worked out well. I got this back within a week or two, and it had my visa in it, so I was ready to go. This may sound like a lot of steps, but one, this is pretty par for the course, and two, when you spread out all of this over a couple of months, it's really not that hard. And then after that was just booking my plane ticket, and my family went over with me a couple of days early to visit Seoul, and then we went down to Kunsan where my dad was stationed, checked out the air base there, and then we went down to Gwangju. And now let's talk about some of the pros and cons. I wrote down a list because I get distracted really easily. So some of the pros, I would say, general life experience and expanding my worldview. I felt like I had lived in a little bit of a bubble, even though I had grown up moving around the country because I had a parent in the military. Where I had lived at for college really felt like a bubble, and it still feels that way. I don't live there anymore, but it felt like a bubble, and I wanted out, and I wanted to still expand my worldview because even though I had lived around the US, I hadn't really spent any time abroad. I had been to Canada once at that point, so I really hadn't been in like a foreign country with a very different culture than my own at that point. So that was one of the benefits. I got to make friends from all over the world, which was really cool. And that was something that I didn't really anticipate, was just how many people were coming from so many places. There were a lot of Chinese exchange students. I think there were more Chinese exchange students than any other like nationalities of exchange students at Chondae when I was there. But I got to make friends from Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, China, Croatia, and then I got to also meet other American exchange students. I met my best friend who, she was also American, but we literally went on a trip to Italy together last fall, and we're planning at some point a trip to Mexico as well together. We're still in contact. She's gonna come visit me later this year. I'm visiting her later this year. We're still very close. So that was an amazing advantage of studying abroad. Number 3, realizing I like living in big cities. This is a huge one for me. Gwangju has about 6 million people, at least at the time that I was there, which in Korea is considered the country, which is insane. But I guess if you consider the fact that the Seoul metro area has about 20+ million people, that it looks a little less crazy, but here in the US, that would be in like the top 10 largest cities. So, but I really enjoyed a lot of the advantages of it. The cultural institutions and museums that were there, the shopping, the dining, the clubbing, a little bit. I only enjoyed that portion a little bit. That's a whole different thing I could go on about. The public transit, that was big. Having public transit was nice. And so all those combined made me realize that I wanted to live in a proper city when I graduated from college. And so that was really cool. As a history major, I also thought it was really cool to experience a country that actually studies and respects its own history, at least more than Americans do. I know there are gonna be some people fighting with me about this in the comments, but you go to a history museum in the US and it's just all adults. And there honestly aren't that many history museums in the US, at least compared to Korea. There are so many more there. There are a lot of archaeological museums there. What I saw a lot while I was in Korea, because I would go to a lot of these museums, was there would be like a parent and then their kid and their friends' kids, what? there would be like a parent with their kid and their kids' friends, and they would be taking them around this museum that in the US would be considered just for adults. Like, you don't see a lot of children at history museums unless it's something that is specifically geared towards children. But these adults will be taking around these children and explaining to them each item in the museum. So like a lot of these had like archaeological items from like the Three Kingdoms period and the Choson dynasty and all these different eras of Korean history, and the adult would be going through and actually explaining each of these items, and the kids seemed pretty engaged. I kind of wonder if this like taps into a cultural difference as well regarding children. Like, do Americans just consider children stupid? Because seeing this difference kind of makes it seem like that. Or maybe Koreans just consider children particularly smart. I don't know. My next reason that I have written down is like kind of vain, but it's also kind of fun, is just the getting to flex knowing a cool alphabet on people. Let's just say I don't look Korean, so people do not look at me and expect for me to pronounce 안녕하세요 correctly. Or 감사합니다. So it's kind of fun surprising people in that way. I one time wrote something in Hangul, the Korean alphabet, on the board at one of my teaching jobs, and a kid actually screamed, which was an interesting reaction to say. That also gets to be like a fun fact that you get to share about yourself. People will perceive you as more cultured. I think that's how I feel people perceive me, that just because of my study abroad experience. Is this necessarily fair? I'm not really sure. Not everyone has the opportunity to study abroad, and then like once you're out of college, unless you like immigrate to another country and live the expat/immigrant life, you don't really get much opportunity to do that at any other point in life. So for a lot of people, that's just not even an opportunity that they get. So is it fair that I get perceived differently because I did do this? I don't know. And then the last one I wrote down for pros is getting to unlock a whole new level of comfort food. Korean is my ultimate comfort food. Like, tteokbokki will emotionally move me. As silly as that sounds. The cons. Not that many cons. I only wrote down 2 cons. 1, choosing to study abroad in a place where you really don't speak much of the language is going to be hard some days. Some of this too is just a general warning. Not every single day of your study abroad experience is going to feel like a magical experience. You're still living life. There's that phrase too, wherever you go, there you are. So you're not gonna automatically have no problems when you're abroad. That being said, if you're choosing somewhere where the language is very different from your own, there are gonna be days that are kind of tough, where it's like, especially if you don't speak a ton of it. I went over knowing the Korean alphabet and some basic phrases, but I went over with the mindset of like the best place to learn a language is the country where it's spoken, which makes logical sense until you get there and realize like you don't know how to tell a cab driver where you're trying to go. So I definitely recommend taking a college class or 2 of the language before you go, instead of starting from either 0, or in my case I was starting from like 0.5, starting from there in the country that you're going to be studying at, because the first month or so is going to be a little bit harder to navigate, and life is just going to be more exhausting. Like, out of this, I definitely gained a lot of respect for people who like either choose to or by circumstance have to move to a country where they don't really speak the language. I feel like I got a lot more understanding for the plight of that, because it's like one time I had to go to the Korean equivalent of urgent care, and I walked in and had absolutely no idea how to check in. So there are going to be times where that language barrier will be tough. The other con that I put, and I made a video about this 7 or 8 years ago, that no one really talks about, is the post-study abroad blues. This kicked my butt in 2019 after I got back. I had this really incredible experience. I absolutely fell in love with Korea. I had friends from all over the world. I had good American friends as well. And I got to experience a new culture, food, language. It was like really, really cool. And then I came back to my small city in the US, and I went back into that bubble that I was trying to escape, and I had a really hard time with it. I think this is a really common thing. A lot of people come back from studying abroad and all they want to do is just go back to the country that they were at, which is interesting because by the end of my semester, I was there for 1 semester, and I was definitely ready to come home back to a place where I know the language and the culture. I was ready to be with my family again because I'm really close with them. I was ready to start working on the next step of my degree program, which was going to be applying to the teacher education program. So I was ready for all of that, and then I came back and within a month was like, I want to go back. That was really hard. I went through a pretty big depressive spell after that. And then COVID hit like a year later. So that was like kind of rough. The second half of being in college was honestly a little bit rough. All I wanted to do was just leave the city that I was, that I was from and studying in. And eventually I did. I moved to New York. Hi everyone. I'm popping in my work clothes and my work makeup. Ignore the zit. To add on one more con that I think is actually really important to talk about, which is that if you are studying in a foreign country where you are not super familiar with the culture and you are not proficient in the language, that there are going to be situations where you are inherently more vulnerable, especially because people with bad intentions sometimes target foreigners. If you have seen the video going around made by Siobhan Aguilar, I'll put like a little screen cap here of the thumbnail. That one's making the rounds about this story where she went on her study abroad program through a program called CIE, which I'm not familiar with, to Spain. The culture guide was the sort of buddy that the university paired everyone with to get the students like acclimated to Sevilla and learn a little bit more about the city. Sounds like they paired them up in groups, whereas at my university they assigned an individual buddy to each student. Anywho, a group of these culture guides who were not students at the university, which is really weird to me, but that's neither here nor there. Actually, that is here nor there. You'll see why. These culture guides had a travel agency that they used to target foreign students to give them free trips, and they would take these students on a trip, take them to a different country, and ply them with alcohol, illicit substances, and sometimes they would assault them. And so that's just one example of the sort of way that you can be targeted as a foreigner. In Korea, you may also get approached by cults. That happened to me once. I have a video of it. I don't remember if it's up though. Especially if you're very foreign looking in Korea, like if you look like me, obviously of like European descent, or if you are like obviously not Korean, then you're gonna have an extra target on you. And sometimes I also experienced a lot of Korean men, not all Korean men, just a very particular kind, trying to just try and shoot their shot with foreign women. And in particular, a lot of the time they had no boundaries. And so I would be out with my friends and they would just walk up behind us and just grab us and start dancing with us. Like that level of lack of boundaries. So I'm sorry, my radiator's at it again today. I don't know why I wind up filming on days where my radiator is just clicking about. But that is to say, there are going to be situations that you really have to keep an eye out on your surroundings and be aware that people are going to be looking at you for certain things. A bit of advice particular to this: don't take alcohol from strangers. Make sure that you are not going around to places like clubs and bars alone. Going with people is really important. There was a time where some guy really, really strong-armed my friend into drinking the alcohol that he wanted her to drink and gave to her. And if we had not been there, that would have probably gone very poorly. So don't go out partying alone. Don't take alcohol from strangers. If someone is offering you a trip, double check with your program that this is a sanctioned trip, because my program had like some field trips that took us to different cities in the country that were within about a 2-hour radius. But that was on an itinerary that was given to me at the start of the program. So if someone's taking on a trip, make sure that it actually is part of the program and that you're not just assuming that they're affiliated with the program. Because in the case of this travel agency and Siobhan's story, the travel agency was not actually associated with CIE. It was a completely different third party and not a sanctioned event. So those are just some advice to keep safe, because unfortunately people all over the world, there's good people, there's bad people, there are going to be ones who have ill intentions toward you, and if you are in a vulnerable situation, that's going to increase the likelihood that something can happen. And just be aware of your surroundings. If you feel like someone is pursuing you, you can leave. Unfortunately, the risk of bad things happening is never zero, but there are ways to decrease it. So please stay smart, be aware of your surroundings. If you feel like a situation is starting to go south, even if you feel like you're not powerful in a situation, get up and walk out. Do I think overall that it was worth it? Yes. Did I consider it worth it financially? Yeah, I think that one is like kind of a wash, to be honest. I don't think I necessarily got more career opportunities because of studying abroad, even though I had like one or two people bring it up in an interview because they saw it on my resume when I put it on there. But really, it hasn't made a difference in my income that I can tell, at least. But I was able to do it without touching the student loan money that I accepted as a freshman and then immediately placed into a savings account and didn't touch until I moved to New York after graduation. Was it worth it from a life experience perspective? Absolutely. If you are a college student right now who is considering studying abroad, I say do it, because there is not another point in your life where it's going to be that easy to just pick up and go to another country for a semester or two. There's just not, unfortunately, unless you like work a remote job, you don't really have the opportunity to just do that. And so there are programs out there that help make it more affordable. There's scholarships. There's also the Critical Language Scholarship, which is usually a summer program. I didn't do it, but my best friend did. The Critical Languages Scholarship program is interesting. It's definitely more selective than just a traditional study abroad program. Here's what their website says. CLS program provides immersive summer programs for U.S. undergraduate and graduate students to learn languages of strategic importance to the United States national security and economic prosperity. Really, it's just an intensive language program, though. That sounds like it's going to be something that like tries to funnel you into a government job, but that's not necessarily true. My best friend, as I mentioned earlier, she did it, and now she's a programmer. But the languages are Arabic, Chinese, Hindi, Japanese, Korean, Persian, Portuguese, Russian, and Swahili. Notably, these are a lot of languages too that are not necessarily super commonly studied by college students. I'd say Chinese is a pretty common one, and I knew some people who took Arabic, but like most of the time people are learning like Spanish and German in American universities. And those are also like the more popular programs. So these ones, if you're interested in learning a language that's a little bit underrepresented in American university programs, I recommend checking this out. It is very selective. You have to write a bunch of essays about why you should be the one to do it. I actually applied for the CLS program to go in the summer of either 2019, I think the summer of 2019 is when I tried to apply for, and I got rejected. So, and I got no feedback on my decision. I think my essays were just like kind of shit. More advice, I would say financially, especially since this channel is going to be focused a lot on financials. Financially, I would recommend budgeting high for your program. I had some friends who did not do that. I had one who basically ran out of money while she was studying abroad because I don't think she got quite as many scholarships for her program. Plus, her parents weren't really able to help her out. And so she was kind of on her own to afford everything. And she basically ran out of money on the program. And that seemed to be a very, very stressful situation to be in. She even actually like wanted to get like a $2 box of coffee at like instant coffee packets at a Daiso, which is like a Japanese discount chain that's really popular in Korea. And I wound up buying them for her because I was like, it's $2. It's $2. And she acted like I had bought her the world because at that point she was just so out of money. So I would recommend that. If you have dietary restrictions or food intolerances, really research if you're going to be able to eat while you're there. I had another exchange student friend in Korea who was vegan, and ate rice and kimchi the whole time because there was just no food for her to eat. A lot of foods that are vegan in the US are not in Korea. Ritz crackers are not, Oreos are not. Most Korean snacks have some type of like meat powder in them for flavoring or dairy. So it's really, really, really hard to eat vegan. If you eat at like a Buddhist temple or Buddhist restaurant, they are vegan because the monks, Korean Buddhist monks are vegan. But that's about it as far as finding like actual vegan food in Korea. If you have celiac, I would also advise like maybe study abroad only in Seoul, because they actually have some like celiac friendly restaurants there. But if you're going to be in a country city like Gwangju, you're probably not going to have any food to eat. So take that into consideration. Try and find a country where the national diet is going to line up with whatever your dietary restrictions are. And then I think that's my main advice, really. Try not to go into insane debt doing this. I know that happens for a lot of students. I know I was very lucky in that I had good scholarship opportunities just from, ironically, from being a college student from a fairly rural state that not a lot of like high school graduates go to college in. That because of that, the State Board of Education had actually some pretty solid scholarship opportunities for students in my state who chose to stay in state for college. So I recognize I'm very lucky in that way. I got some opportunities not a lot of people get. But still, if possible, avoid student debt. Especially do not take private student loans for this, okay? If you are gonna use loan money, make sure it is a subsidized government loan, or federal loan, I should say, that is a low interest rate. Interest rates are high right now, but like anything over 7, don't take it. Do not take it, and especially do not touch private student loans because there are no debt forgiveness programs for those. Those public service loan forgiveness programs, PSLF, those are for federal student loans anyway. So just a little bit of advice. I think it was absolutely worth it. I think most people who study abroad wind up feeling that way as well. I think it's a kind of a once in a lifetime experience for the vast majority of people. Some people do go back. Like I had a friend who she wound up teaching English in Korea for a couple of years after she graduated college. So some people do go back to their study abroad country, but most of the time you kind of come back and you resume like normal American life. So this really, for the vast majority of people, is like the one chance they get to do something like this, and I say absolutely take it. All right. If you've actually stuck around and watched this full video, thank you. I know I have 80 subscribers on this channel already. I'm gonna find it very funny if that drops down to 79 or 78 because people did not realize they were still subbed to this channel. But I am gonna be making more videos. A lot of them are actually going to be about like finance creators on YouTube and stuff like that, because that's what currently really interests me, and an interest that I have really gotten into since becoming like an actual rent-paying adult. So stick around for that if you want to. If you do want to see those videos, subscribe. I'm working on ones about reviewing a financial guru's YouTube show, or not YouTube show, Netflix show. I'm thinking about doing videos on Dave Ramsey and Caleb Hammer and my thoughts on them, any controversies they have. So stick around for those. I'll be releasing videos on those over the next couple of months as I try to actually do the YouTube thing for real this time. So anyway, thank you and have a good one.